Michigan's new Democratic nominee for U.S. Senate spent the day after the primary trying to build a message of inclusion within his own party.
Intra-family squabbles are the biggest ones. But we all know that when we walk out the house, we stand united. And sometimes we got to have it out about the conversation about who we are and who we want to be. And I think I'll tell you that the things that unite us are so much bigger than the things that divide us.
Let's bring in CBS News political director Fin Gomez. Always good to see you, Fin.
Hello, Fin.
So what does El-Sayed's victory, do you think, mean for the Democratic Party as a whole? It was closer than we expected.
Yeah, a lot closer than we expected. There were some polls that showed that El-Sayed had a 15-point lead heading into Election Day, and that was not the case. It was closer to like a point. Kept us up all night. It was a surprise in a lot of ways. But look, I think it illustrates the growing strength of, frankly, the progressive wing in the Democratic Party. El-Sayed defeated Haley Stevens, who was well funded, outspent him 9-1. Establishment backed by leadership like Chuck Schumer, Gretchen Whitmer, the popular governor of Michigan. But I think it's another sign that, Democratic base voters in some of these battleground states like Michigan are frankly pissed. They're mad at the establishment. They're mad at the leadership, and they want candidates, frankly, who want to fight, who want to take on the establishment, who want to take on Donald Trump. And I think that's what El-Sayed embodies. I think now, as you saw there, he does have a hurdle. He's got to unite the Democratic Party. It was a bitter primary. He needs some key voting blocks to show up for him in November, including black voters in Detroit. He needs them to show up if he has a chance of winning against Republican Mike Rogers. We already know, we have confirmed that there's going to be a lot of money spent in this. The super PAC aligned with Senate Republicans has confirmed to CBS that they're planning to spend upwards of $40 million, $45 million in this battleground race. That's more than any other of these top Senate battles. So it just shows you how significant this is, and why are we talking about Michigan? Why does this matter so much? Because it which party controls the Senate could hinge upon who wins this state.
All right. Let me ask you about something else, Finney. Yesterday, Democratic Senator John Fetterman slammed Senator Bernie Sanders for endorsing progressive candidates like Dr. El-Sayed. Take a listen to this.
Bernie Sanders will never represent any more than 640,000 people in Vermont. That's all he's ever done, and he ever will do. Bernie's not flipping seats. He is helping install volatile and dangerous kinds of candidates and now put, Democratic seats at risk.
To be fair to Senator Sanders, and he doesn't obviously need me to point out the fact that when he ran for president back in 2015, that he garnered millions of supporters and did very, very well in the primaries for a moment at least. Correct me if I'm wrong.
He won Michigan. He won Michigan, and you're absolutely right.
Exactly. All right. But Senator Fetterman does make a point, which is now as a sitting United States senator, that perhaps Senator Sanders' politics may not be in stride with where most of the electorate is today in 2026. It's very different than 2015. So is he right that primary wins like Dr. El-Sayed's are threatening the Democratic Party's chances in the midterm?
Look, I think he shares a growing concern. I have talked to other Democrats, including centrist Democrats here, national Democrats in Washington, D.C., who are nervous about El-Sayed's chances. They did feel that Haley Stevens or Mallory McMorrow offered better. There were better candidates in the general election against Mike Rogers. However, there is a sense that by other Democrats, establishment Democrats, who feel that El-Sayed can make up that difference, that he's a strong communicator, and he also has indicated somewhat in some of these interviews, including yours, Vlad, frankly, yesterday, that he's moving more to that sort of general election mode, more of a, taking more of a less, he's got a different audience now. He's got to focus on those general election voters that are different than the primary voters. But though, that is a concern. That is a concern, the one that Fetterman voiced. faced is something that there are some centrist and moderate Democrats who do feel that way. It's going to be a tougher fight than it was perhaps for Stevens. There was some polling that showed right before Election Day that Rogers would be beating El-Sayed, but Stevens would have been ahead of Rogers if she were the nominee. But look, we have 90 days, 89 days specifically until Election Day. A lot can happen, and I do think and I do predict this race is going to get very, very ugly.
Yeah, before you go, Finn, it just strikes me, I feel like we were, and I say we, me, you, when we were here at CBS News back in 2014, 2015, when we were watching the rise of Donald Trump, and you heard people saying very similar things to what they're saying about these progressive candidates. Everybody was like, well, that style of politics is just not in step with where the modern Republican Party is. We had watched an election prior, the election of Barack Obama in 2012, where Republicans did, what was it called, Finn, when they said, we've got to make the tent a little bigger and we've got to include more people. We can't be, we can't look the way that we've looked for the last 50 years. And so there was a sense from people who do what we do that Donald Trump was out of step with the mainstream, and turns out we were wrong.
No, that's a great point, and I think some of these progressive candidates sort of share that sense of being disruptors, right? And I think right now, but you're seeing on the right too, like those type of outsider candidates have been picking up some momentum. I think El-Sayed it typifies that for Michigan for some voters, especially on the left, but it's really throughout. There's a sense right now there is an anti-establishment, anti-Washington fervor that permeates throughout the midterm landscape, Vlad.
All right, we'll be watching.
Good, appreciate it.